I'm going to go ahead and
Okay,
hit
got it.
everybody, and I'm sure we'll have people admitting as we go along.
How many people do you think are going to be here?
I think it was about 75 or over. We were getting people signing up all day too. So Kristen, if you'll just help me admit people as they come.
Sure can.
Okay, everybody is getting sit.
Oops, I muted you.
Hi, welcome everybody to the Autism Society of Greater Phoenix's night with the wonderful, fabulous Dr. Temple Grandin. My name is Olivia Fryer. I'm the executive director here at the Autism Society of Greater Phoenix. So I just want to welcome everybody and thank you so much for spending your time with us. And a special welcome and thank you so much for your time, Dr. Temple Grandin, for joining us this evening. We really just I can't say enough about how impactful you have been, not only to my family, but to our community as well. So we're very much excited to have you. For those of you who may not be familiar, Dr. Grandin is a professor of animal science at Colorado State University. Facilities she has designed for handling livestock are used by many companies around the world. She's appeared on numerous TV shows such as 2020 and Prime Time. And her books include Thinking in Pictures, Livestock Handling, Transport, and the Autistic Brain. My personal favorite is The Loving Push. And she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in September 2017, and in 2022 was named a Colorado State University Distinguished Professor. So thank you so much for being here, Dr. Grandin. We could not be more excited to have you. So I will let you go ahead and take the stage. Kristen and I will be here to mute people, but Dr. Grandin does want to hear and see you guys. So she will have time.
Oh, yes, I like to see people. And what I'm going to do is start out, talk about my therapy when I was a very young child. And then after we talk about that a little bit and do some questions, we'll have plenty of time to discuss all the adults on the spectrum issues. But I think I'll just start out. I had no speech till age 4, all the real severe symptoms of autism. And I was very lucky to get into very good therapy at 2.5. What I have observed with little kids therapy is some teachers have the knack. They just know how to engage these kids. So let's say this 2-year-old's just lining up blocks. Well, then the therapist starts taking turns lining up the blocks to engage the child. So what do you want out of therapy for 2- and 4-year-old kids? I want speech. I want the ability to wait and take turns in all kinds of games. And I want skills like eating with utensils. And if you're getting good progress, I want that. I want progress, but I also want the kid liking to go to therapy. Therapy should be fun. It should not be something bad. Now, let's just look at some tips on working with the speech. Slow down when you talk to these kids. When the grown-ups talked fast, it went to gibberish. Went to total, absolute gibberish. Also, give the child time to respond. They're like a phone on a slow internet connection. It takes time for the web page to download. The processing speed is slower. Give the child time to respond. Sometimes it might be 15 seconds. That's a long time. Always encourage the child to use the language. You know he wants the juice, and you know he knows the word for juice. Encourage him to use that word. Encourage her to use that word. And you need to be getting enough therapy. The little kids, about 20 hours a week. There's been all these controversies about ABA. There's been some very bad ABA. It was extremely rigid. And the thing is, there's a lot of different things that are getting called ABA. And what I want to look at is, how does that kid interact with that therapist? I don't really care what the name of the therapy is. Am I getting progress? More speech, more ability to wait and take turns, more skills like dressing, brushing teeth, using utensils, and the child should like going to therapy. That's what I like. That's what I want to get at 2-year-olds and 4-year-olds. You know, the real young kids. And a good therapist does not drive the kid into sensory overload. Sensory problems in autism are real. They are also extremely variable. Loud sounds like a school bell was like a dentist drill hitting a nerve. Or the child may hate the vacuum cleaner. You know how you can get them over that? Let the child play with the vacuum cleaner where they control it. They turn it on and off. The school bell. Let's go down to the principal's office when the school is closed, and I can turn it on 50 times. You see, when the kid controls the bad thing, then it's better tolerated. Now, how about wearing ear protectors? If you wear those all the time, it makes sound sensitivity worse. It makes the brain more sensitive. So what you want to do is you can have them with you. That gives you control. And then there's a few places you're going to use them, like really horrible bathrooms with all those automatic things that go off at random. Yeah, you'd wear it then. But not all the time. You see, but give control. That's really, really important. Another thing that bothers some individuals with autism and dyslexia and ADHD is flicker on LED lights. Why don't you take out your phone right here? Film that room in slow motion video, regular slow motion, not ultra slow, just regular. You'll find the bad lights that flicker. And they're not necessarily cheap lights. There's a lot of different things that make them flicker. So let's say you're stuck with a classroom where you have lights that flicker. Go out and buy a lamp, find a really bright LED that does not flicker, and you put it next to the kid's desk to block out the bad LED lights. I like nice, simple stuff like that we can work with. And the other problem I had is I couldn't stand to be touched and hugged. And I had my squeezing machine. And one of the reasons that helped desensitize me, I controlled the squeeze machine. See, this whole thing, sensory stuff, control is a very important thing. I've talked now to probably 3 or 4 families where the vacuum cleaner went from scary, awful thing to favorite plaything. A battery-operated leaf blower went from scary, awful to favorite plaything, simply by letting the child play with it. Now, obviously, there's some tools I couldn't let a child play with. But let's say an older child can't stand the sound of tools in a woodworking shop. Well, you let them take the electric drill, and they can drill all the holes they want. They control it. That is one of the keys. So that's just some of my most basic stuff on real little kids. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of getting into early therapy. Don't wait 2 years for a diagnosis. You've already got a diagnosis. He's not talking. Rule out deafness. Make sure they're not deaf. And rule out cleft palates, thing called tongue-tied, something that might have to be surgically corrected. And deafness, something physical wrong, rule it out. You got to start working with the kid. Because you know what? Therapy is pretty much all the same, regardless of the diagnosis is. You know, it could be some other diagnosis. You still work with these little ones in basically the same way. Then I want speech, turn taking, and skills, like washing their hands, hair combing, eating with utensils, is basic skills. Well, maybe somebody has a few little questions about little kids or about sensory, and we're definitely going to have plenty of time to talk about the some of the adult issues. Are there any questions coming up in the chat? No chat. Let's put some stuff in the chat then.
Yeah,
I
if you
like to
guys
get
wanna,
people talking,
you can either chat or you can unmute yourself.
and just talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
See what videos we've got up here. Okay. Yeah, we've got some different videos. Good.
We do have one that was submitted by Lizette.
All right, let's use the submitted question.
And she said, what is something you could tell a parent or caregiver of a child who's considered nonverbal? Oh, I'm sorry, who's not considered nonverbal, but his speech is so limited he can't communicate appropriately with others?
Well, some of these kids, both nonverbal or partially verbal, typing. There's some very good books written by non-speaking autistic people. And one of my favorites is Tito Mukhopadhyay. How can I talk if my lips don't move? How can I talk if my lips don't move? And it's definitely available as an ebook on Amazon. There's another one called Carly's Voice. And then there's the big New York Times bestseller, The Reason I Jump. And there's a sequel to that book that I think's better because the boy is older and has more insight. It has a silly name like Fall Down 5 Times, Get Up 7 Times, something like that. And that is the sequel to The Reason I Jump. And if you're dealing, I don't recommend these for like 2 and 4-year-olds, but let's say you're 7 years old and there's no speech, definitely would recommend getting these books. And then they type completely independently. And I'll tell you a little secret. There's a problem with attention shifting. And So you don't use this desktop that I'm on now. Don't use laptops, because the problem with them is if I look down here at this keyboard, way down here, looking way down here, the print appears way up here. Can't make the shift, but a tablet, the print appears next to the keyboard. Use a tablet, an iPad or some other similar tablet. And there's plenty of tablets around. That doesn't have to be the latest thing. And you can use text messaging software, and you just put it in airplane mode so they can't send it. Okay, that's somebody put a comment in there about Tito, and I actually met Tito, and some people will say that Tito's cute. There's no way that Tito was cute. I found a picture that his mom had never seen, I had never seen, in a library, and it was kind of a silly picture. It was a painting of an astronaut in a spacesuit riding a horse in the middle of the desert, sort of like your background right there. And I put that picture in front of Tito, and I said, "Tell me about this picture." And he typed super fast, "Apollo 11 on a horse." There's no way that could be cute. Someone was there. That's his mom, but it was too fast, and none of us had seen that picture before. That's why I chose it. And it was kind of weird. And it convinced me. And then he got up and flapped and ran around, because it takes tremendous mental effort for him to screen out noise. He can do maybe 3 questions, and then he has to rest. Okay, somebody wrote up how they stopped their twins from biting each other. First of all, I want to look at what gets this behavior started. I don't know how old these twins are. One of the real little kids might just do some real basic behavior stuff, like I reward them for longer and longer and longer periods of time and no biting.
They're 3 years old.
They're little kids.
Yeah,
Okay.
nonverbal.
And they're nonverbal, and they're biting.
Yes.
One of the things you could do, what do they like for rewards?
Oh, watching their Disney movies that have songs.
Okay, well, if you can go increasingly long periods of time without biting, then you get to watch Disney movie.
Okay, well, the concern is, are they comprehending when I...
Yeah, well, you see, one of the things is, and this has been learned in training animals, is, and this is why clicker training is really popular in dog training, because you can time the reward. Let's say if you give them the Disney bit, they have to understand that you get the Disney video for not biting. And so when you first start, they can go 5 seconds without biting, and stick the iPad in front of them. And you've got to get the timing just right, otherwise they don't make the connection that a Disney movie is a reward for not biting.
Mm-hmm.
If you had somebody good in behavior, and then the other thing is, what other behavior do these twins like to do? That's a behavior I want, biting I want to discourage. Let's try to get them to do some other things. What good behavior do they have that they like to do together?
Climbing. Is that good behavior?
Okay, another thing is you could give them something else to bite. Have you worked with an occupational therapist at all on sensory issues?
Yes.
And has that made any improvement?
Not with the biting.
Not with the biting. See, because there's kind of 2 approaches: the sensory approach by giving them something else to bite, and a behavior approach for rewarding them for not biting.
Mm-hmm. How would the clicking come into play?
Well, the way that works in animal training is you train the animal that when they hear a click, that's associated with getting food. So you start off and you click the clicker, you give the dog a little treat. So you click the clicker, you give the dog a little treat. You click the clicker, give a dog a little treat. That's called charging up the clicker. And the thing is, you can get the timing with the clicker much better than the timing of tossing a little treat at the dog. It's been very, very effective in taming wild Mustangs. Very, very effective. for doing that. There's been wild Mustangs trained that you couldn't hold or touch.
Hmm.
And it's totally positive reinforcement. And they use tiny dog treats. I mean, they have little tiny training dog treats. They're like pills. So you can have a whole lot of them. The dog's not going to get fat eating it. So you see there's behavioral approaches, and then there's sensory approaches, where you give them something else to bite on or chew on. So those are some of the things you can do,
Thank you.
because this the behavior. You certainly want to get that stopped. Okay, public versus private school. It all depends upon the particular place. I don't want to get into that argument, because there's good of both kinds of schools. And engineering is a term called site specific. And it's the particular school, the particular people. And that's the thing that's important, more than the public versus private. You got the right place with the right people that are going to help you, then it can work out. Yes, somebody wrote, Tito's amazing. Dealing with puberty. Yep, this can be a real problem. And then you get involved with behavior. They've got to be taught things like public and private behavior. Things like that, they got to be taught. Deal with sex urges. There's stuff you absolutely don't do in public. The other thing is some books on called circles of contact, like who you can hug. You know, your mother, your father, your brother, your uncle, but not the mailman or the grocery clerk. That's somebody you say hi to. That's an acquaintance. You know, there's some books that kind of has like a target and makes it very clear. But what's important for a lot of individuals is, you know, rules. Also, these kids get online when they get into puberty, they get in piles of trouble. Sex offender website, you don't want to end up on that. Then it messes up your life like forever. Comprehension of literature. I get that question all the time. And I think part of the problem is that you start out with too abstract of a comprehension. I remember in high school reading Shakespeare, and some of the deeper meaning I didn't understand. But reading something on how to build something, I had no problem with understanding that. Okay, let's say I said Mary went to the supermarket and bought spinach. Okay, that's real clear. But let's say Mary went to the supermarket and bought cake mix and birthday candles. So your next level of comprehension is, what is Mary planning to do when she goes to the supermarket and buys cake mix and birthday candles? See, that's the next level. Oh, wait a minute, I'm not here. That's the next level of comprehension. So let's start out with just the vocabulary level. Jim went and watched the NASCAR car races. You see, that's real. There's no like additional meaning to that. And start with stuff that they'd be interested in. Okay, the question, dyslexia. There's a lot of autistics that have some dyslexia. There's also a lot of crossover with ADHD. Lots and lots of crossover with ADHD, with some of the sensory issues, some of the auditory processing problems. Okay, now you say it's 22 years old and struggling with college. Well, I need to have more information on where he is struggling. What is the problem? And I hear this all the time when I get this term struggling. Now, I want to ask, is he at home, or is he staying in a dorm at the college? Probably community college, he's probably at home. Now, the big mistake that a lot of these kids make is when they start to fail a course, they don't ask for help soon enough. When I started to fail a math class, I immediately asked for help. So I need to know what he's struggling with. Another big problem I'm seeing is students that do really well academically, but they aren't learning work skills. They aren't learning how to do a task outside the family.
Right.
We need to start with volunteer jobs at around age 11. Helping out with the farmer's market, putting up the tent and helping somebody with that. Church volunteer jobs. I was at a meeting just recently, a month or so ago, and there was a young lady, she was 12, and she was so proud she was the coffee lady for their church. And that was her job every Sunday, to set that up. You see, these kind of job things can be set up in that community.
Right.
And then the instant they're legal, they need to get real jobs. And we need to avoid the chaotic, rapid multitasking takeout window.
Right. Right.
We avoid that. And I talked to one mom, and she and the manager of local McDonald's figured out a really good thing. Her adult daughter ran the cash register. But when the store got busy with the multitasking, then she cleaned the tables.
Yeah.
Really simple. And the other thing is pilot's checklist. These are really important. This will save a lot of jobs. Any task that involves a sequence, like I got to tear that ice cream machine down, clean it, put it back together again. Tear down steps, cleaning steps, reassembly steps, like a pilot's checklist. Look them up online.
Right.
Both the simple airplanes and the big airplanes. And they're just key words to jog the memory, because I cannot remember sequence.
I understand you completely, and it seems to be his motivation, and maybe that's my lack of understanding. He's exceptionally bright, but it's almost like he refuses to engage himself. Like his intrinsic motivation is
Okay, well,
non-existent. He does what you tell him to do. He's task oriented, but he doesn't initiate these things on his own. I fear for how
I
he's going to
think
end
part of
up
the
as an
problem,
adult.
he has to have a reason for studying.
Yeah.
And I was a horrible bored student who didn't study till my science teacher showed me that studying was the pathway to a career, pathway to becoming a scientist.
Mhm.
And there's got to be a reason for studying.
Right.
Does he have any interests?
I mean, he has interests in video games, but he doesn't want to take any kind of computer classes in college. They frustrate him, and
He may not be computer material. I'll tell you what's worked on getting the video gamers off the video games: auto mechanics.
Okay.
I'm serious. I am serious.
Okay.
I have talked to 5 or 6 different adults in other parts of the country where video games were replaced with auto mechanics, and they became auto mechanics.
Amazing.
And one of them fixes trains for the railroad, and they love him. And I've talked to several of these adults that got off of video games, and they said that motors are more interesting. Let's talk about the different kinds of minds. I'll tell you why he hates the computer classes. I tried some of those classes. I had to drop a class in programming. Fortran. Now you see how old I am. Look up Fortran, computer languages. Took a class in Fortran. I had to drop it. Because I'm a visual thinker. Everything I think about is a picture. And a lot of kids that love to play video games, they're the picture thinkers. And in my book, this is my newest book right here, Visual Thinking. And I talk about the different kinds of minds. And I'm an object visualizer. Horrible at algebra, but my kind of mind is good at mechanics, art, animals, and photography.
Okay.
Those are the things my kind of mind's good at. Then your visual, spatial, pattern thinker, programming, math, music. They look at algebra, and it's like music. Algebra is like incomprehensible to me. And then, of course, there's verbal thinkers, thinking in words.
Okay.
And he may be a visual thinker. And the problem is, computer science may not be the right way for him to go. I wanted to program computers. I remember the computer's name was Rax. And he was located at the University of New Hampshire, big teletype machine, big tractor feed paper this way. I could log into Rax. That was about it. I had to drop the class. I had to drop a physics class. I had to drop a biomedical engineering class because I couldn't do the higher math. He may be somebody that needs to be doing hands-on. and this is where schools have made a big mistake, taking out all the shop classes.
Right.
is I worked with people who built equipment for me. You can look up beef plant video tour with Temple Grandin. Piece of equipment called the center track restrainer system. I developed that. And the person who built it for me originally was undiagnosed autistic.
Ah.
Owned a great big huge metal shop. You ever show, and you see, we got kids growing up today, they don't use tools. I think it's
Yeah.
just terrible.
Yeah, I
How
agree.
can you learn that you might be good with tools if you don't use them?
Right.
And I have found the video game addicts, they tend to be my kind of mind. Introduce them slowly to auto shop and find the right mechanic to work with them.
Okay, good idea.
Because he may not be able, I couldn't do the computer programming. But then there's another kind of autistic kid that's the math kid. And that's all discussed in this book. This is one of my newest book. Visual thinking, the hidden gifts of people who think in pictures, patterns, and abstractions.
I have it on my Audible list.
You've got it on your Audible? Well,
Yes.
the most important chapters to read is chapter 1. And there's you don't even have to read the entire book. I'd read the intro, chapter 1 of what is visual thinking, screened out. And where are the clever engineers? If you read the first 3 chapters,
Okay.
those are the most important chapters for you to read.
We'll do tonight.
Okay. Young 8th grade, stopped talking. We have a young woman, 8th grade, stopped talking and showing herself for a couple of years. How do we get her to feel comfortable again? The first thing I'm going to ask you is, did something actually traumatic happen to this person? Something really legitimately traumatic. You know, like a death in the family or an accident or a fire or something, something. Yeah, this is something where I have to have a bit more information. Because that's the first thing I'd want to rule out.
Well, she doesn't speak much. I've tried asking her, and she's gotten a little bit better where I pass my phone and we'll talk through text. But when I
Okay.
ask her about personal things, she just responds as I don't know or no, or she'll kind of she'll stop. And then when
Does she have any interests?
she'll come out of her shell a little bit, like she'll tell me she loves her guinea pigs and she loves watching certain shows and games. But then as I question more, it's like she starts shutting back down. She gives me a little bit and then
Well, all right, animals. She likes her guinea pigs.
yeah.
Maybe she should walk dogs for people. Does she like dogs?
Yeah.
Maybe she needs to, because she's got to start learning some work skills. And it's important for her to walk Mr. Jones's dog, because it's somebody else's dog that's working for somebody else. Maybe she can just start walking a few dogs for other people. That's a simple thing you can do. She's old enough. She's in 8th grade to do that.
Mhm.
And then it starts teaching some job skills too.
Okay.
And taking the dogs out and have a good time with them.
Yeah, because she does enjoy doing that. Or like we have a garden in our campus, and I've noticed that sometimes she'll dump her water bottle on the plants. So she's a very caring, sweet person. But
Well, maybe she needs to work in the greenhouse. These are see, this is one of the reasons why I think it's so bad that hands-on classes have been taken out. How can you find out if a kid's good at music if you don't have musical instruments? How can you find out they're good with tools if they don't have tools? And I was just in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and they have a place called the Vertical Farm, and they have people on autism working in this greenhouse, hydroponic greenhouse, growing lettuce. And they're very good at it, and they're very proud of their jobs.
Yeah.
And maybe get her doing more of these kind of things, where she grows some vegetables, and you're proud of the fact that she grew those vegetables, or the lettuce. You grow the lettuce, and then we have it to eat.
Yeah, well, we have a garden. The thing is, we have a garden, we have things, and she'll refuse. Like she won't want to go outside, or she says that she hates school. And I've tried going the fun round where, I have her with me and I'm talking and I'm trying to do the things that she likes, but then she won't come for a day or a couple days, and then it just completely
Well, then
goes.
the other thing is, so you're the teacher then, saying we don't know what's going on in the home. See, one thing that really helped me was my mother and the school teachers worked together. The rules were the same at home and school. Because the thing I find over and over again, he's wonderful at school, horrible at home, or wonderful at home and terrible at school.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's doing something right and somebody's doing something wrong. And getting parents and teachers on the same wavelength, working together, that's the most successful thing.
The thing is, we've also talked to mom, and mom will just, she kind of doesn't give much either. She says that at home, she also doesn't talk. She communicates through her phone and she's always in her room. So in both home and school, she's just kind of
See, this is the thing, the reason why I have a lot of granddads come up to me, grandmoms come up to me. They discovered they're autistic. So why are they out in the workplace? Because in my generation, social rules were taught. I'm not saying you're going to be the social butterfly. Learn how to shake hands, greet people, and then a family meal where we put all the devices away and we take turns talking about our day. That was a common thing. We need to be doing more of those sorts of things.
Yeah, I'll
Where
talk
we
to
have
mom.
some device-free meals. Because when I was a little kid, we didn't have phones, obviously, but we weren't allowed to bring books and toys to the table. There was no TV in the dining room. This was the time for the family, so each one could talk about their day.
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely talk to mom about implementing those things at home.
Well, we're going to have some time where you just can't be on devices.
Mhm.
And the other big thing I'm finding is these kids are not learning shopping. They're not learning bank account. They're not learning saving money. These are things I learned when I was really young. And okay, your host really likes one of my books, The Loving Push, because what we got to do with these kids, you don't force them into things that would just be overwhelming. I call it, you don't throw them in the deep end of the pool, but you got to stretch them and give them some choices. We're going to go to Walmart or Target, and you can pick. And we'll start out going early in the morning when it's not busy. So it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Hey, this is talk about stopping stimming. What was done with me is I had places where I could do it. Was allowed to stim after lunch in my room. At the dining room table, it was not allowed. We had some places where it was not allowed, but there were other places where I was allowed to do it. And stimming can be calming. I can remember doing it, and it helped calm me down. But the thing is, you can't just stim all day and not do anything else. Okay, here's making comments about other people. I just was taught not to do that. You know, to say that somebody's old or somebody has a big fat wart on their chin or whatever. You just, I was taught that was rude, and you just don't do that. You don't say that Aunt Bella's fat. I remember mother telling me to stop doing that. Okay, somebody has something wrong with Zoom. I can't help them with that. How do I teach a 14-year-old son to make connections at high school? And this comes up with some of the other questions that were sent to me about adults being lonely. Friends through shared interests. When I was in high school and I was bullied and teased, the only places I was not bullied and teased was horses, model rockets, and electronics. For another kid, it'd be music. For another kid, it might be a chess club, even a math club. You know, interest in race cars, and they go to car races. Friends through shared interests. And so that's where he's going to get, what does this 14-year-old like to do? Okay, and this is for Elisa. What does he like to do? And I was reading a book recently about ladies back in the 1800s that ended up running ranches. I think some of them are autistic. I can tell you what their interest was. Raising the best cattle they could possibly raise.
I couldn't figure out how to get off mute.
Oh, you just
This is
click on
Alyssa.
click the slash off the microphone.
Ryan, my son, his interest is music. anything to do with music production, singing, instruments.
Now,
So
is he
I've been
getting
trying
involved
to look,
in band and getting involved in those sorts of activities, choir, musical activities?
not yet, but I've been talking to him and the school about how to go about it because I think that's going to be a good place for him to meet people.
Well, do they have a band in that school?
They do.
Kind of 14-year-old should be able to go in band.
Yeah.
These are the kinds of
Yeah.
things he needs to be doing. Because I've had one parent say, "Oh, my kid's in band at the local public school. It's working great." Or church choir. That's a musical activity.
Okay.
You know, I'm just trying to think of things that you probably already have access to.
Yeah, we've been looking into the clubs at the school, so and we have a meeting with the school next week.
And then one teacher for an elementary school kid started a Star Wars club for her
Awesome.
autistic kid and got other kids to join it. And now the kid had friends who are Star Wars club. That's difficult to do. And these
That's
are
a
all
good
things
idea.
that don't cost anything. And he needs to get in band. I think he needs to be learning how to play a whole bunch of instruments. It's what he needs to be doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, that's what I would do there. And at 14 years old, can he shop in go to a store by himself and buy something?
He still struggles with
50 cents bought a lot. 50 cents could buy a lot of stuff. But if I wanted a 69-cent airplane, I had to save for 2 weeks. I was learning that at age 7. The idea of saving money.
yeah, he definitely saves money really well.
Good. Okay, now the thing is, Emily's iPhone here is talking about stuff that's very, very abstract. I think it would be easier to teach him these things with very specific examples of accountability and responsibility. You know, intentional versus unintentional. We're going to have some specific example. Okay, let's say I took my fist and I punched somebody. That's intentional. But let's say I just accidentally bumped into them. That would be accidental. That was unintentional. You know, let's start with specific examples of accountability and unintentional. I mean, if I went and pushed another kid over, that's intentional. If the kid tripped on a banana peel at the grocery store, nobody did that. Yeah, you see, this is very abstract, very verbal. You see, my mind thinks in like specific examples. So what I think we
Okay,
need
I
to do
apologize.
with
I
this-
also could not figure out how to get to the mute. It's on the next screen over. So a
Okay.
good, thank you for taking my question. I apologize if it was complicated.
Well, it's too abstract.
So so there was an incident today. My son does jujitsu, and there's a lot of kids, a lot of movement in there, and he accidentally tripped a girl over. And
He does what for jujitsu, you were saying?
Jujitsu.
Okay, all right. And he
And
accidentally
unintentionally knocked her over. She cried, and I would like to see him empathize a little bit more and like ask her if she's okay, and apologize if it was an accident, obviously. But I do see him kind of try to avoid the situation and sometimes kind of get a little bit mad at himself.
Give him the instruction that if you accidentally do something to somebody, like make them fall over or spill a drink on them or something else, that was not intentional, you apologize. That's just what you do. You have to say, well, you accidentally knocked Tommy over. You've got to apologize. That's what you do. And you just give the instruction in a really clear way on what they should do. You see, and this looks very verbal, very abstract. And he's going to understand a lot better with a whole lot of specific examples of times where he should apologize. Oh, I don't know, hopefully that makes it clearer. Okay, this is 18 years old and has intellectual disability, has problems with hygiene. Some of these problems with hygiene are sensory. And now on other basic skills, can he do them? Or is it mainly hygiene?
Hi. No, it's pretty much everything. I still need to do most things. He has learned a lot recently, being able to even just get himself a snack in the fridge. Even toileting, it took him till 12 years old to be toilet trained.
And does he have motor control issues, like difficulty moving, difficulty manipulating things?
Yes, very much so. No body awareness whatsoever.
Okay.
He's extremely clumsy, puts everything on backwards, like even just getting dressed. That's a skill that we've been working on since he was like 3 or 4. He still puts everything on backwards. So I don't know if it's something in his brain that is just making everything look backwards like a mirror, that he does that.
Yeah, you see that in the hygiene, you see, then you get the someone like me where wasn't using deodorant because of sensory issues. And this is something, it was not a motor issue. And this is something, the hygiene, you just got to clean it up. So
Yeah.
one of the things is there's a lot of choices now of things.
Yeah.
So there's lots of choices. I'll tell you some little tips I do.
Okay.
I always like to put my hand into the shower and get the water just right by putting my hand in the shower before I get in it. Another thing, I hate water in my eyes, so I hang a towel over the towel rod, over the shower rod, so I can blot my eyes like this with the towel.
Okay.
2 little simple things I do
Okay.
that might really help.
Yeah.
And then back in the 70s, we had these gunky, awful deodorants. Well, now you got these solid sticks. You don't even feel them. There's no
Yeah.
excuse for not using them. And I
No.
just get a solid stick that doesn't have any fragrance.
Yes.
And you got to wash under your arms. Lots of choices for soap. But I hate a shower where every once in a while I get a hotel that has this. I just hate it. Where when I have to reach, the shower is going to spray me when I turn it on. I hate that.
My son,
Like my bathroom at home has a shower curtain, so I can turn on the shower, adjust it, then put my hand in it, get it just right, then I get in it.
okay.
That
That-
helps. I think that will help.
Yeah, because he won't even take a shower. He'll take a bath.
Okay,
Because
that's fine. He can take a bath. That's fine.
Shower. Yeah.
But being able to, but the thing I really hate is where when some bathrooms are set up and everything, where to turn it on, they've got like a glass panel that blocks it, and
Yeah.
it doesn't slide. Hate
Yeah.
this kind of hotel bathroom. And I've got to reach in there and it's going to spray me when I turn it on. I hate that.
Yeah.
Now I've learned to tolerate it. But let's say in some place where I had to stay all the time, that hotel I'm not staying in. If it's all the time.
Yeah. But even little
it's something
things
I
like,
really hate.
and I have a visual schedule for our morning routine, where he's got to, hello, sweetheart. He has to, brush his teeth, brush his hair, deodorant, go to the bathroom, get dressed.
All the
shoot.
things. Give him a checklist. Pilots have to do that every flight.
Okay.
Every
That-
flight, the pilots have to do the checklist.
Yep.
Not optional for pilots.
Okay. Yep. I wrote that down. I've been taking lots of notes.
And if you look them up online, it's really interesting. Like for the Cessna, for small plane, so like 10 items on it, and it might just say flaps. Pilot knows what that means. That's the control surface on the wing. They have to set that.
Okay.
And then for the big airplanes, it's chunked, like first get in the cockpit, pre-taxi, pre-takeoff, 10,000 feet when you leave tower control. It's chunked into different sections of the flight.
Right.
And you can actually find these online. I've looked them up for big airliners.
Yeah. Okay.
And they're very simple, and it's just in bullet points. 1 to 3 words to jog the memory.
Okay.
It's not written in a narrative.
Okay.
Like I hate the way MapQuest does directions. I absolutely despise it. I want bullet points, like a pilot's checklist of my turns.
Okay, fabulous. I will do that.
Okay, that
The-
might help you out. Okay, let's now, Marla here is talking about high rates of nonverbal students coming into kindergarten. And hopefully the school is able to work with them.
Yeah,
And
that was my my question, and I am actually a facilitator for our autism programs in the district. And I'm curious about your opinion on that because there's more students coming in now than ever.
they're nonverbal
And
students.
yes, and I'm just curious about your thoughts for those students and, you know, what are the best practices for
Well,
meeting
one
their
of the
needs
things
in
is,
your
I'm going to
opinion?
ask you, did these students get any early intervention therapy?
No.
All right, that's part of your problem, because when I was 2.5 where I got into early intervention therapy, and we need to get this numbers down. And I talked to a lot of low income areas, and I say, let's go to your church, let's get some grandmothers to start working with these 2-year-olds, because the worst thing you can do is nothing. The worst thing you can do with these kids is give them a phone and let them sit in the corner vegetating on it. That's the worst thing you can do with 3-year-olds. You know, and we can get some grandmothers. And the thing I have found is some people know how to engage these kids and some don't. And you got to get the teacher that has the knack. These sounds like these kids have no therapy, and that's why you've got so many of these coming in. It's just awful.
I agree. Thank you.
Yeah, it's totally bad. And these kids are going to need some intensive work starting in kindergarten. With some one-to-one teaching.
Well, you know, there's unfortunately there's kind of a mixed opinion on that because in the district they want to try to keep the kids in the general education setting to give them the exposure to typical peers.
Well,
However, a lot of the students' needs cannot be met in that
well, the
setting,
thing
like
is,
you're saying, it needs to be
if the
one-on-one.
kid had gotten the proper early intervention, let's say at 2 and 3 years old, the amount of nonverbals coming into kindergarten would be cut in half, I'd estimate. These kids are coming in with no therapy. And I think when some of those rules were written, they were thinking about kids that had some therapy before they came to kindergarten. And they're going to need some therapy one-on-one. Now I think, and I'm talking, you know, maybe, okay, in the whole school day, get an hour and a half a day of one-on-one therapy. And the rest of the time they'd be in the regular class. And then we get into who, you know, you got to encourage them to talk. You've got the other thing, the learning how to wait and take turns at games is really important, because it teaches you how to inhibit a response. And that's something we got to teach these kids. How do you inhibit a response? Inhibit impulses. That's really important. Okay, so we're getting them all in there. I want to try to work on something about getting them into early intervention, some of these kids, because I'd like to cut this down. This is kind of alarming. And this is due to lack of no therapy before age 5. I'm assuming that's kindergarten 5. Yeah, that's terrible. And these kids are going to need get some aides, get somebody that's got a little bit of training to pull them off the side and work with them. Do it on the side of the kindergarten classroom. Try to get them to talk, get them to start naming toys and objects, you know, juice and foods and things like that.
One of
Play
the
turn-taking
things,
games.
Temple, a lot of these kiddos have not learned how to sit still, and so they're, you know, experiencing a lot of, you know, elopement. They don't want to, you know, sit in a seat more than, you know, 10 seconds.
Yeah, and they haven't had, you The other thing, a lot of these kids, they need to have sensory breaks where they can go run around. Maybe go run up and down the hall. They're gonna need that. Okay, here's a 19-year-old multiple job training programs. What I found on a lot of these programs is it's too much one size fits all. Okay, this 18-year-old, he's struggling to get a job. We have two things, getting a job and then keeping a job.
He
I
hasn't
think a
even
lot of these
gotten
job
the
interviews, we
yet.
need to short circuit that process and use the back door.
Yeah,
There's a
he
huge
hasn't even been
backdoor.
able to get a job yet. So
So in other words, there's the problem with getting a job. So let's get rid of the interviews. You know how I used to get cattle handling equipment designs, jobs? I would simply show my work off.
mhm.
In fact, I started out in Arizona. I designed a lot of equipment for Arizona feed yards in the 70s. There's one of my drawings.
Oh wow.
I showed off my work.
Mhm.
That's how I got jobs. Forget the interviews. Let's find the back door.
Okay.
Okay, like your son, what's he good at?
He's really good at remembering things. He loves to do the stocking and, putting things on shelves and organizing.
Okay. Well, why can't he get a job at the supermarket then? We gotta
tried.
get rid of the interviews.
Right, yeah, we've tried to. I'm not sure how we can get past he's got to get an interview.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Half of all jobs are back door. Forget the front door. You know somebody at the grocery store,
Mm-hmm.
you go up and ask them to hire them.
Okay.
That's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Back door.
Okay.
And we get a job stocking shelves. Let's start with that.
Okay.
Because you have two things here, getting the job and then keeping.
Right.
And then one of the problems with keeping it, being late is often a big problem.
Mm-hmm.
Not being on time.
Well, he doesn't drive. I'm his driver, so I have
Is
to
he
take
making
him.
any progress on learning to drive?
He has no interest, and we have guardianship, and the judge said no.
Oh, okay. Because if I hadn't learned to drive, I wouldn't have worked in the cattle industry. And I started in the Arizona cattle industry.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the Red River feed yard where I started, I just learned a few months ago they're going to build a housing development on it. Yuck. That's going to be sad. They're going to build a housing development where I designed one of my best projects that's shown in the HBO movie.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to build houses on top of that.
Oh, my gosh. Wow.
Red River. It will probably, the housing development will probably be called Red River in Stanfield, Arizona.
Oh, man.
But the thing is to find somebody that could work with him. What's his reading level?
We're about 6th to 7th grade.
Can he do basic arithmetic, add, subtract, divide?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And any ability with tools or building things?
A little bit. He had a little bit done when he was in high school through the program he was in high school, but not a lot.
Well, let's start out and get him a job in a store.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I talked about the visual thinkers, the math thinkers, and the word thinkers. Now, if he's a word thinker who likes lists and all this kind of stuff and history, the kind of job that's higher level than stocking shelves is what I call specialized retail, where they get recognized for knowledge of cars. There's been very, very good success with selling cars, selling auto parts, selling specialized business insurance, selling office supplies. So you know every copier in there, and you don't try to sell in the store, you sell them the right copier for them or the right printer for them. There's a zillion computers around. What would be the right one for this person? Selling phones. This is what I call quiet specialized retail.
Okay.
And all of these environments are relatively quiet, and you work one at a time with a customer. You know, you go in the iPhone store, or even, you know, the Samsung, the Android store or whatever. These places are relatively quiet. I call that specialized quiet retail. And some individuals on the spectrum can get extremely good at that because they're appreciated for their knowledge of the products. And they also appreciate, they don't try to sell a whole store to them.
Right.
You sell the thing that they need. Bookstores are another really good venue. You know, for something that's a higher level job than stocking shelves.
Right.
But let's find some supermarket people you know and get him into the supermarket.
Okay.
Forget the computer online rubbish, forget all that rubbish. And then if the manager likes you, you fill all the junk out
Okay.
to satisfy the computer freaks back at the corporate office.
Yeah.
No, I'm serious. Half of all, let me tell you how an autistic guy got a good job. I was at the Jackson Hole, Wyoming airport just a few days ago. I was sitting in there, I had a real early flight. I was sitting in the restaurant eating some horribly overpriced food. And a lady came up to me and she told me she knew about this autistic guy that was in a restaurant or some other place. And he was yakking about music, and a radio station manager heard his knowledge of music and hired him to be a DJ.
Oh, wow.
That's total backdoor. That actually happened.
Wow.
You
Okay.
see, you never know where the back door is going to be.
Right.
I'll forget about the interviews. And then he's going to need a good job coach.
Yeah.
Because you have to learn about how to interact. I had a very interesting meeting just the other day in Denver. Veterinarians and veterinary techs who work in the emergency room, in the pet emergency room. I saw a lot of autistic people there.
Yeah.
Why they're attracted to that? It's not boring. And the other thing is you don't have the difficult with clients. They only see you once.
Right.
Well, so you just have to learn a few scripted things on how to talk to somebody if their dog dies. You know, where you might just say, we tried everything, we couldn't save it.
Right.
You don't say something like, well, your dog's going to just croak. You don't say that. You have to coach them, almost like being in a foreign country, on what would be the right thing to say.
Okay.
But I was really surprised. Real young crowd, very different veterinary conference. I had never been to the pet emergency room vets. And it turns out for the neurodiverse, there were lots and lots of them there. Lots of them.
Wow. Okay.
You know, and if I went into veterinary medicine, I'd be attracted to that because it's a lot more interesting than just doing a lot of vaccinations and stuff like that. Okay, kid hitting his head. Okay, well, let's get an OT involved in this, because lots of times if you do other sensory things with pressure, things with swinging, these behaviors like self-injurious behaviors tend to reduce.
So that's my kid.
And did you work with an OT at all?
Yeah, so he has a twin. They both are severely autistic, and they were in OT for a very long time, since less than a year old, and now they're in the school system, and we just got a new OT in a private clinic, but they are in OT 2 to 3 times a week at the school. And according to their teachers, or his teacher, he does really well in class because he has a one-on-one aide, and his twin brother is in a separate class, which I requested. But when he's at home, he's with his twin. They're both very, very competitive. They're both nonverbal. They're both very, very aggressive. And it's hard for me to, as one parent, meet both of their needs. And when I'm attending to his twin, the other one, if he is frustrated, he's very quick, very, very fast. He will seek out the tile floor or the corner of a wall or the coffee table and just bang his head until he's got a nice little goose egg. And then by that time, I'm too late to get to him. And
Well,
we
if he's
do have,
banging his head that hard, you might want to might need a helmet because that's,
yeah, well, I've thought of that
concerned
too.
about damage to the brain.
I
banging
know.
your
The
head.
thing is how would I keep it on?
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, he's both very, very aggressive, and we do have some techniques that we have worked on with OT, you know, some of this sensory input, squeezing. He's got a body sock. I'm a former music therapist, and so we do a lot of music therapy in the home.
And now,
Anyway,
is it getting any improvements at all?
no, it's not.
It's not good. So that's not improving. You see, and you have twins, so you've got two of them doing it.
Yeah.
That makes it a lot harder. Does he act any better when he's by himself with you?
Yes, he does really well. When his twin is not around, he's great. He's great. I think she knows that. And I don't know if it's the competition, because even when we would have speech or OT or PT in the home, there was just always a lot of competition with the twins. And maybe that is a twin thing, you know, because
well, there
maybe
is a certain amount of
I don't
competition
know.
with twins that's going to make it harder. And I hope you're getting some really, really good expert advice. This next question about not wanting to try new things. Give her a choice of some new things to try. See, that gives them control. Give some choice of something new to try. That sometimes helps.
Such as what?
Well, try new things. When you say new things, what new things did you try to get her to do?
I would try to redirect his attention to a toy, or I would turn on, they're very receptive to shows like Miss Rachel or some sensory things. I tried to redirect his attention to something that would distract him from his brother.
Well, hopefully you're going to gradually get some improvement. I've got to go on to the next question. It was about a 15-year-old teenager that doesn't ever want to try anything new. This was from Maris.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And you know, these kids, we gotta, you know, give them some choice of new things to try. Something I would do. Now, one of the things I want to, okay, smartest thing I've ever is put your son in the marching band. Good. Glad to hear that. Well, there's some, okay, here's a question about abstract thinking. Well, there's some autistics that are very, very good at math, which for me is abstract. Well, that is an interesting question from Eliza. I found I kept developing throughout my 20s. I didn't even feel like an adult until I was about 40. Now, I want to make sure that we had questions from adults on the spectrum. And maybe what we need to do is switch gears here and address some of the questions from adults on the spectrum. Because a lot of this is with younger kids and kindergarten, younger kids, and from the parents. And I was my understanding that there were questions here from adults on the spectrum. And I want to make sure that we answer those.
May I speak up for my son who's on the spectrum? He's a 22-year-old male.
Okay.
And he was diagnosed with bipolar several years ago. He is just so beyond understanding why he, you know, has to have autism and now struggles with bipolar. His emotions are all over the place. Why is it that it seems like autism and psychiatric comorbidities go hand in hand?
Well, they just tend to. Now, is he taking any medication?
Yes, he is. He was taking lithium for the last like 4 years. Now he's
Well, I'm going on my book, Thinking in Pictures, my old
Yeah.
autobiography right here.
Yeah, yeah,
I have a
yeah.
whole chapter in here on my experiences with antidepressant medication. It saved me. It absolutely saved me. The colitis cleared up, and anyone who's an adult thinking about taking medication, I strongly recommend reading a chapter called "A Believer in Biochemistry." And when I went on a low dose of an antidepressant, the colitis stopped, the constant anxiety stopped.
Mm.
But it's a low dose. The big mistake is made with Prozac, fluoxetine, Zoloft, that sertraline, Celexa, some of these other drugs, too high a dose. The label doses are too high. You get agitation and insomnia. If you're using these drugs for anxiety, it's starter dose or lower. And even though this is 25 years old, it's still accurate.
Yeah.
Can I please?
And I don't know if I'd even be alive today if I hadn't gone on the medication. My health was so bad from just having my body ripped apart by colitis and all kinds of other problems.
Okay. So
But I'd recommend reading that chapter where I describe my experiences.
Yeah.
And if the person on the spectrum reads a chapter and they relate to it. And I remember reading a paper back in the 70s on endogenous anxiety. That's anxiety from within. I had like 7 out of 10 symptoms from this paper. And it was treated with low doses of antidepressants. And I remember reading that paper. And I put it aside because I didn't like the idea of taking medication. And then I had a very, very scary, stressful eye surgery. And after that happened, I decided better take the medication. And also exercise is very helpful.
Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
And when I started on the medication, I was early 30s. But there's a lot of people on the spectrum in their late 20s. You know, they're fully adult by that time, where I've seen a low dose of an antidepressant, something like Prozac or Zoloft. Celexa has been getting, rave reviews. I would not recommend Paxil. That's a crappy drug, that paroxetine. Now, if you're on it and you're doing well, stay on it. But it's not a drug that I'd recommend for starting with. It's kind of a crappy drug. So if you're starting, it's Prozac, fluoxetine, Zoloft, or Celexa. And then I have to look up the chemical name for that one. But it saved me. I've been on it 40 years. I've seen gigantic messes when people that have been stable with bipolar, stable with anxiety, go off their meds. Losing houses, losing jobs, everything going wrong that you can imagine. I've also seen some big messes with high potency pot. Not CBD. CBD, that's the stuff that calms you down. But THC. They got the THC level so high in this pot, it's 7 times stronger than my generation's pot. And it's making people paranoid. I've read scary stuff on the PubMed database about it. I'm not a fan of it. I've also seen people who are stable on meds they're tolerating well, and they go, "Oh, I don't need that anymore." Complete disaster. I talked to one lady. She went off an antidepressant, and she did go back on it, and it worked again, but it took a lot longer for it to work. And she's got a very nice job working for a museum. Then I could do long talks going to the airport and learn all kinds of things. But if you're bipolar or any of that kind of tendency and you're stable on your meds and your meds you tolerate well, don't go off them.
Temple, I know you were looking for a question from one of the adults, and I found one.
I'd like to get questions from the adults because I don't want them to say they got left out.
Yeah, so Clay
we got lots of parent questions, but I haven't got any adult questions.
Yeah, so Clay here posted in the chat.
She already answered my question.
Oh, go ahead, Clay.
Yeah, she already answered my question.
Oh,
the question about anxiety, though, I think that wasn't it from an adult.
Are you taking any medication?
Mother and daughter. My question was already answered by you, Temple.
Oh, okay. And then you might like this book, Different Not Less. This is 18 adults later in life diagnosed, and they tell in their own words their stories. And where the diagnosis often helps later in life is with relationships. And they wonder why relationships are going wrong.
Hi, Temple.
Okay.
My name's Diane. This is my daughter, Michaela.
Okay.
Spectrum. So Michaela had the question about how do you handle anxiety?
Well, I've been on antidepressants for 40 years, and they have greatly reduced anxiety. And I'm 76 years old right now. I don't know if I'd be alive if I hadn't gone on those medications, because colitis and gastrointestinal was tearing my body apart when I was in my early 30s. And I went on the antidepressants, an old-fashioned one that came out before Prozac came out, and the colitis cleared up in 2 weeks. I have a few symptoms, but they're minor compared to everything going through me.
Yeah. Well, we started medication about a year ago. We kind of waited on that, but
Yeah. Did it work?
What do you think? Is your anxiety better since being on the medication?
Yeah, somewhat. A little bit. Yeah, I think so. I think
What was it an antidepressant or was it something else?
It's
what was it?
It's antidepressant and anti-anxiety. It's Lexapro, actually.
Lexapro? Okay. And the other thing that I found helps me is bursts of hard exercise. The medication alone is not sufficient. And I used to do jogging in place until I started tearing my knees up. And then I did sit-ups, and now I'm doing old lady push-ups because the sit-ups were hurting my sciatic nerve. But I do 120 old lady push-ups every night where I raise the front end of myself up, and then I lay on the floor and I swim. I do 40 laps of that. Then I get breathing pretty hard. And it took a long time to work up to that. You're not going to work up to that just overnight. But that burst of hard exercise seems to really help. You know, like you get on an exercise bike and set it really stiff, where you have to really pedal hard for 5 minutes. And that tends to work better than just walking around the block.
Yeah.
And you have to work up to that. When I first started doing sit-ups, it started out with 5. And then I worked up to 100, took several months. But that's something that helped me. And you've got to work up slowly. You don't want to have a heart attack. But that's something that helped me. I also found, and I think people have anxiety want to read Thinking in Pictures, because before I took the medication, it was sort of like fighting with fire. There's 2 ways to fight the anxiety: stay in my room and withdraw, or go out and do something really exciting and fight fire with fire. Like get on a horse and gallop really fast, ski really fast down a hill.
That sounds like fun.
Those were things that it's either withdraw or fight it head on. And the anxiety, it was biology. My nervous system ramped up for fear, absolutely no reason. The littlest thing, get my heart pounding. And then I went on the medication and I thought, well, I guess that's how normal people feel. And I've been on it for 40 years. I'll also tell you, they've switched vendors on me like 5 times. And the generics, they're not exactly bioequivalent. You either get a slightly higher dose or a slightly lower dose.
I was going to say, do you remain on like a low dose, or
Yep.
have you?
I've been on the same dose for 40 years.
Wow. Okay.
And when I first went on it, my anxiety would go in cycles. So when I first started, my anxiety was going like from 100 miles an hour to 200 miles an hour. And then when I went on the medication, and this was back when they had the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit. A lot of young people don't remember that. And okay, I would be going 55 miles an hour to 100 miles an hour. It would still cycle, but at a lower rate. And one of the things I had to fight the urge to up the dose. I let that nerve cycle pass. Also, I have some problems with seasonal affective disorder. So in the wintertime, I get up at 5 and I sit under a blue spectrum light. They're easy to buy now. You can just get an LED light that's blue spectrum.
Similar to your glasses.
and keep my, so I'm lengthening my day, my photo period, because I'd get depressed in the winter, and I'd use that light from the middle of October through the end of January. But I found that getting up early, put that light on, I'd sit and have breakfast and read the newspaper stuff, read the books, read stuff under that light. And then that's keeping me on the summer photo period. That
Okay.
also helped, and that's not difficult to do.
Yeah, we're actually doing something like that now to help Michaela with her sleep. It's called a Lux lamp. And
Okay.
it's glasses. It sounds similar, but it's to wake up her brain in the morning because she has difficulty falling asleep at night. But if she can wear that in the morning, it's more, you know, waking her brain more.
Well, that wakes you up, and then red spectrum lights helps put you to sleep.
Okay.
Blue spectrum wakes you up.
Yeah.
That's the reason why they tell you not to look at computer monitors right before you go to bed.
Right.
Because that's blue spectrum light, and it tends to keep you up. And the other thing that helps is exercise. The other thing is if you get a gym membership, you've got people to exercise with. You see that we need to get more things where people get out and as soon as COVID got over with, man, people went right back to the gyms. They wanted to be out there with the other people.
Yeah. Yeah, we just started actually personal training for Michaela.
Yeah.
Like, well, about a month ago. So I have to keep that up.
And then Michaela, have you learned to drive?
I would like to someday.
How old are you?
Not right
Michaela?
now. I'm also looking for a job right now. I'm struggling with that, but we're working on it. I have a
All right,
job
let's
coach.
let's just go in the back door. What are you good at?
What am I good at? I enjoy working with kids. I want to work with preschoolers. I want to be like a teacher's assistant. And I actually watched your movie recently with my mom. It's very inspiring.
You want to work with kids?
What? Sorry.
Well, let's work what you see what they. You can do volunteer jobs that are like therapeutic riding. You know, you see, like to be a childcare worker, you got to have like certain education. But I think it's important just to get a job and that discipline of being there. You know, the other big thing I'm seeing is the problem with folk rehab is they don't differentiate between bagging groceries as training. And from like someone like you, that would not be a suitable career, but it'd be a good training job. So what were your best subjects in school?
Oh man, it's a good question. Probably I would say music. I did theater for 9 years. I really enjoyed that a lot. It was a good experience. It was fun.
Okay.
Good at English.
I was good at English. Thank you, Mom. I was good at English.
But I think it's important just to get out and where I'm seeing the problem is not making the transition to work. And I think a lot of this interview stuff, we need to short circuit that. Half of all good jobs are backdoor. You know somebody, I talked to a guy when I visited Apple. I talked to a guy there that does hardware design. He designs antennas. You know how he got the job? His professor knew somebody at Apple. That's backdoor. He was from the Midwest. That's, well, how'd you end up there? Here. Well, he contacts. Backdoor.
Yeah, that makes sense. She has worked. She's had several jobs, but just within the last year, been working on some health issues. So we're trying to get back out there. And we actually have a really good job coach right now, has a lot of experience with those on the spectrum. So we're real helpful. But
I found that going on the antidepressant cleared up some health issues because I wasn't, the colitis was one of them, because I wasn't in constant state of stress all the time.
Yeah.
You know, then an exercise, program, but you got to work into that gradually. I didn't do 100 sit-ups overnight. That took 3 months.
I bet. I did karate in my teenager years, and it took me 5 years of training, and I didn't get my black belt till I was 16. I started when I was about 8 or 9. So
you finally got it.
Fully get it.
And the thing is, that's something you do with other people. See, I think these activities with real activities Because right now, all the businesses want to get people back in the office at least 3 days a week. Every business, I don't care what business it is. And right now, you got 30% of the office space in Denver and nobody's in it. People don't want to go back to the office. But the business leaders, I don't care what the company is, they want them back in the office.
Yeah, it's nice to do things in person. Yeah. Just trying to do that since COVID. It's been rough for a lot of people, but it's nice once you get out in
All right,
person.
let's
it's
look
like,
at
"Whoa."
here's a question about public transportation.
Thank
Do
you,
you use
Temple.
that?
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Well, one of the ways to teach that is you go on it in the beginning with the parent or the teacher and a few times, and then you're gonna start doing it without the parent and the teacher. You do like one part of the bus trip. Or wait a minute, what happened here? Can't hear you. We lose audio.
I can hear you fine, Temple.
Okay. Okay. Okay, looks like that one of the bus companies is reaching out to people. And I know some of the airports are where the autistic can go and practice going through security and stuff like that at the airports. Okay, it looks like but these are all skills that we need to learn. Okay, Clay, do you have a question?
Well, you said math is abstract concept. I just feel it might be because I can't understand. I feel like I can understand abstract things even more so than maybe other people. And you said that for you, math is something abstract. But in your book, you talked about like the trees. You only see the
Yeah, there's
trees and
three
not the
kinds of
forest.
thinking.
I feel like I see the forest, and I would imagine that you see the forest better than
Well, there's some stuff
neurotypical.
where I can, as a visual thinker, I can see, see, it depends upon what you're calling an abstract concept. Okay,
I was
let's say
hoping you
something
could
like,
I was hoping you could give me an example of
all
that.
right, let's
that.
say justice.
Right, exactly.
Okay, let's start out really simple. Justice would be, you caught a murderer, and it went to trial, yeah, he was guilty. That's justice. But let's say an innocent person was blamed for a murder they did not do. It would not be justice to throw him in jail. So there's actually a group of people there's an organization that uses DNA. It's called the Innocence Project. This is an example of justice, where a prisoner that was wrongly convicted, they proved that with DNA didn't do the crime. Okay, those are examples of justice. It was not just to throw him in jail for a murder he did not commit.
And for you though, like if
I'm using specific examples.
Right. So if I put you in a jury and then there's people and you're the only person on the spectrum, I would think you would look at the details more and have more of a thorough verdict than average, not lower than average.
Well, the other thing is,
justice.
as a visual thinker, I remember watching some trials, and you have to look at what is really pertinent to the case. Okay, let's talk about DNA contamination. Well, I happen to know scientifically more about this than most people do. And if a sample gets contaminated, it's going to be less likely to convict, not more likely to convict. Let's say you
But I'm
mix
saying that
DNA
helps
together.
that you're better at understanding justice than someone who's neurotypical then by
So,
saying that.
But let's say you talk about very abstract concepts. But everything I learn is by specific example. A specific example of something where I felt that was justice. A specific example of something that was not justice. Like throwing somebody in jail for murder they did not commit. That would not be justice. You see, so to understand a concept like justice, I've got to have specific examples. Of stuff that would be just and stuff that would not be just.
So it might take you a little longer to get these abstract
That's right.
concepts. Aren't you more thorough in your ability to understand
Yes.
the abstract?
Well, and then the other thing is, well, it being a scientist, also a visual thinker, when I look at evidence, okay, the murder scene. You know, did the person, yeah, I don't want to use actual cases because they get too controversial, so I'm not going to use actual cases. But I'm thinking about a case where I think it was pretty obvious that the guy did the murder because his DNA was all over everything. And they were giving all kinds of reasons I thought were BS for why he didn't do it. Like one example would be, which I think is BS, the political beliefs of the prosecutor. That doesn't affect DNA evidence. I tend to go to the hard evidence, the DNA, and the guy's DNA was all over that stuff. And then they said, well, somebody else got in and touched that car that had the DNA on it, and that would have contaminated it. Well, that would have made it less likely to convict because the other guy that got in there and touched the stuff, his DNA could get on there. But I look at the hard evidence.
But
and there was enough DNA evidence on this particular case, which I'm not going to name, to convict the guy for murder.
But how has being autistic in your life hampered you from seeing the abstract in abstract concepts?
See, it depends on, but it's something like justice. For me to learn what that is, I have to have specific examples. Okay, how do I learn a lot of autistics, good and bad? Okay, well, if I steal an apple from the store, that's not as bad as robbing a bank. You see, there's different levels of badness. I stick gum on the teacher's chair, that's not robbing a bank. So I can, with specific example, I can have different levels of bad, and robbing a bank's not as bad as killing somebody.
Yeah.
That's why in legal you give misdemeanors and felonies. But you see, to understand that I'm not going to put gum on the teacher's chair, consider that as bad as robbing a bank.
Yeah, because the oversimplification, black and white thinking. Abstract is not black and white, it's the gray.
Well,
so if
you
it's
see,
just
but
good or
I'm
bad,
putting specific examples of different degrees of badness.
No, it's a good point.
And gum on the teacher's chair, that's bad. It's not something you should do. But it's not robbing a bank, and it's certainly not killing somebody. So you can put specific examples and have different degrees of badness.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Temple, I think we have time for one more question. We have about 3 minutes left.
Okay. Okay. I'm finding a lot of comments about things that bus companies do for travel training. That's really good. You need to take advantage of those programs.
I have a question as an adult in the workforce. So as an adult in the workforce who has dealt with being heckled, harassed, harangued, and for being different all my entire adult life, I finally, after 50, walked in and found I was autistic. And now I'm trying to figure out how to explain that I'm different because of being autistic, and all I'm hearing is, oh, it's just an excuse. And it's like, I'm wired differently.
The thing is what are you doing at work that's making them do this? Sometimes you just get people that are bullies.
Yeah, I've had to acknowledge that is in some cases the case.
Some people are just mean.
I'm trying
bullies.
to learn how to ignore them.
They're just mean bullies. The other thing, when you're different, all your job reviews, if you get good ones, print them out and keep them at home. And what kind of jobs have you had?
I love helping people. So I did a skills and assessment, and I work on a technology help desk because people are calling me for help. There's no confusion. The problem has always been in the room because I'll hear wrong answers or what seemed to be wrong answers or what I perceived to be. So it took me many years to stop helping the people in the room.
Well,
and
yeah,
just
because it just ticks
put
them
on
off. It ticks them off.
completely.
Just make yourself really, really good. And all the good comments you get from those customers, you print them out and take them home and keep them for your
I
portfolio.
do have them.
And then the thing is just keep your nose in your job. And tech support's something that is a suitable job to do at home. And but one thing I've learned is to not rub colleagues' noses in their mistakes. Just be the best tech support person there is. Print out and keep at home all the nice comments you get from them. And the other people are going to be making mistakes. But a lot of customers then, when they find you, you're the best tech support person they've got in there. And then you get the jealousy issue. You can get a really bad jealousy issue in those kind of situations. They can be real nasty. And then the other thing is, you work for those customers where you fix their computer problems or whatever the tech is you're fixing. You fix their problems. And they're so grateful. And they are the people you work for, not the other jerks that are in the other cubicles. You work for those clients that are so grateful you fixed their stuff.
I do.
I think that'll make you feel better.
And they're my heart
And print
and
out their nice
soul.
print their nice comments out and put them on your wall at home. Don't put them on the cubicle because that will anger. Put them on your wall at home. Put them on your bathroom mirror. That's what you need
I
to do.
have to live with my coworkers though every day.
You have to live with them, but don't rub their noses in their mistakes.
I've stopped correcting. I've stopped answering questions. I've stopped. I have learned how to talk quieter, which is very difficult. You taught me that in the rules of social relationships.
Yeah, you have to talk quieter. That's right.
I stopped answering their questions. They would ask questions and I thought they would want answers because they asked questions. And you taught me in the unspoken rules of social relationships that no, that's not really what they want. Even though they're asking the questions, they don't really want answers.
And then they get jealous. And that's the other thing. And if things going better at that job now?
Much. Yeah. Yeah, they are. It's
and the
just,
thing you need to
it's the
think
whole
about, the
box
real
thing.
client is that person you're on that phone or you're on that Zoom call or whatever method you're using to talk to them and get their problems fixed. And then you do have to talk quieter. Yeah.
And then
you're
I
probably
get
in
excited.
cubicles.
I get enthusiastic. And then when I get excited and enthusiastic, I get louder.
Yeah. And now do some of the people do some of these jobs at home?
They do. It's not for me. I am not a homebody like that. I love my home. I am very visual. I have pictures on every wall. My home is my ashram. I meditate at home. I like my silence
Okay,
at
so
home.
you don't want to do it at home.
I love having
and
people.
how's the boss? Is the boss happy with your work?
She is. They are. And my coworkers do ask me questions. They ask for help and I'm able to provide them help. It's just the key question is the using autism as an excuse. When I hear that phrase, it just makes me crazy because I don't know how to answer.
Well, one of the things I learned that I had to do is not talk people's heads off. So like they ask you, well, how do you fix the broken mouse or whatever? I would just give them the simple answer and make it short and sweet to colleagues. The broken mouse may just have to buy a new mouse. That may be the best thing to do. Or you've got to get cat hair out of it. See, that's something I visualize.
Well, thank you. Your time
Okay.
has been very much appreciated, and you answered more, and I'll read your books, and thank you.
Okay, and I hope we're able to get to all the adults. I can stay on a little longer if there's some other adults that haven't had a chance to ask their question.
Does anyone else have any questions in reference to adults? Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. Oh, there's a question. Go ahead.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you have any advice for adults that like I really want to go out and do things, but a lot of times my anxiety gets in the way, and also it's hard to like talk sometimes. If you have any advice for that.
Because of anxiety. What kind of things do you want to go out and do?
I just want to go out more and like make friends, and I have a job and everything, but I don't ever get to really go out and do like.
All right, what kind of stuff do you like to do?
I like dog training and skateboarding.
All right, well, skateboarding, go out to the skateboard park, and there's a lot of people there. Just go out and do it.
It's just hard to talk to them.
Join a dog training club. Join an agility club. Agility's a lot of fun. I had a chance to go to one of those. And get involved with an agility club. Do you have the right kind of dog to do that?
Yes, I have a German Shepherd.
No, he can do agility. Okay, so, but that's, you need to join an agility club. They're tons of fun.
Okay.
Yeah, and just do it.
Okay.
And if you're new at agility, then go in a beginner class. Because if you haven't done it before, you need to go in a beginner class. And go in an agility class then for beginners. And does your dog get along with other dogs okay?
Yes.
He's not going to eat another dog. Okay, that's the only thing I don't want to have happen. But those are the kind of things you need to get. Go in a starter agility class.
Okay.
It's a really fun activity. And that's something you can do with other people. And I would just, say, go to Google, type in dog agility, and then Phoenix. Are you in Phoenix? I don't know where you're located.
Yeah, I'm in Phoenix.
We'll find out what's type dog agility classes, dog agility clubs. I do separate searches and see what you can find in that.
Thank you.
Oh, that'd be something. And what do you do in your job?
I work with kids.
Okay, and you like that. That's good.
Yes, I love it.
Okay, good. So you've got a job you really like. That's really important. And the little kids probably love you.
I try.
It's
easier to talk to kids than it is to adults.
Yeah, but just finding things you can go out and do. And there was a big article in the New York Times about loneliness, just in normal adults. All this technology and staying on tech, and we have less bowling leagues and less bridge clubs and less of those kind of things. And we need more young people going to dog training. I've gone to dog training stuff, a lot of older people there. We need young people going into dog training. And one time I was at a community college, and I had a chance to go to a dog agility class. Well, it looked like a ton of fun. And I actually went to the class. It wasn't just on TV. And people were having a great time there. That's something you can go out and do. We need to be doing more of these things where you do real activities with people. Non-line doesn't quite do it quite so well.
Thank you. I will try that.
Okay, now here's the thing about what is the goal, author's purpose, and inference questions. Well, that's getting a little abstract right there for me. Okay, well, we've talked about a lot of different things. And I want to thank everybody for coming. And I hope we got most of the adult questions asked. Do they have dog agility in clubs? I have to go on Google and find out if they got dog agility clubs in Phoenix. I'm pretty sure they do. And then you might try the suburbs around Phoenix, Tempe, Glendale, Mesa. The suburbs around, type in dog agility and then Mesa, Arizona. Do another search, dog agility, Phoenix, Arizona, dog agility, Tempe, Arizona. And you do them as separate searches.
Yeah, I was going to say not only that, but we work in partnership with some individuals who do training for dogs. So if it was ever an interest that you would want to learn how to train the dogs, I'm sure they
Well,
would.
and then there's people that train dogs for search and rescue. I just gave a talk for search and rescue group the other night. And they have specially trained dogs for that. And these are things that we could do.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
Okay, well, great.
Greatly appreciative of it. And thank you to all those that attended. We hope that you were able to take away something wonderful from your presentation. Lots of comments
great.
so far that have said that they have been very grateful for your time and all your perspective. I myself am very grateful for all you've shared and all that I've learned from you over our time raising my 2 kids with autism. So I appreciate
Well, great.
you
Well,
very much.
thank you for having me. It was really great to be here tonight. And I hope I gave you some ideas that you can take home and actually use.
Thank you so much.
Okay,
Dr.
well, great.
Grandin.
All righty. Somebody had say here is a dog meetup thing they just put in there. That's another good thing about this. He'll put stuff up in the chats and a dog meetup group. Okay, well, I'm going to leave the meeting now, and thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, I never
Bye.
did get talk to you, Phil.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you. I'm going to take off.
All right. Thank you. Enjoy your night, everybody. We greatly appreciate you guys for spending your time with us. And I know some of you guys had some really great ideas for groups and whatnot. Please know that we have a lot of activities that we do that are either free or low cost. So totally come to them. Try them out. We try to do new things. If it's ever something you have an idea of, hey, I want to do a meetup at a dog park and let's all bring our dogs. We can totally help you guys get that scheduled. So reach out to either myself or Chris and I'll put our emails in the chat. But just let us know because we want to hear from you and we want to do things that are important to you guys that you want to do. Sometimes we get stuck on like, okay, what new thing can we do? So if you have something, if you have a club or anything, please let us know because we want to be here to support you guys as much as possible. And we can only do that with your input. So I'm going to put our emails in the chat. So feel free to let us know. But otherwise, enjoy your evening.
All right, thanks. I guess I gotta go get a dog first.
You can always just come hang out if you like dogs. I'm okay with that. That sounds like a great one. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a great night.
You too.